Hello, and thank you for joining us for the first ever episode of WeatherWise. I'm meteorologist Liam Healy.
And I'm meteorologist Christine Gregory.
We've got an exciting show for you tonight.
That's right, Liam. Coming up in just a little bit, we will be answering your questions from Twitter and tackling a common weather myth.
In addition to all that, our first WeatherWise topic of the week has been in the news quite a bit. We'll be talking about tropical systems. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us.
We're starting off with hashtag AskAMet. Joining us on set is meteorologist Dan Maslowski.
So Dan, any good questions tonight?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of good questions that we're going to be breaking down. Two of them are going to be from me. So I'm going to be breaking down two questions that we have. One is from Jack. So his question is, what is the difference between sleet and graupel? Well, graupel forms when you have a cold atmosphere with a small warm layer in between. Now, as snow falls, it enters the shallow warm layer and starts to melt. We have water droplets that stick to the snowflakes. You could see a better representation right here. The flakes fall through that shallow warm layer, partially melting, and then we have these tiny water droplets that then stick to the soft snowflakes. As the droplets collect onto the snowflake, they stick, and then the shape of the snowflake changes to more of a pellet or bead shape. Now, sleet forms with the same layer configuration in the atmosphere, except you have the cold, warm, and cold, but the warm layer is slightly larger and it's warmer, which means that that snow isn't going to partially melt, but it's going to melt completely. And that layer is going to freeze into hard ice pellets. And for our next question, we're going to be looking at Bobby's question with dust devils. So how does a dust devil form on a sunny day? Well, the way that it forms is we have we have sun that heats up the surface, and there's this one layer that when the sun heats up the surface, it's going to heat up a small portion. Now that small portion is going to be warmer than everything else. We're going to have warm air in that area that starts to rise, and it starts to rotate. And when it rotates, it's going to pick up any dust or sand, any debris that's at the surface, and then that's how you're going to get that nice dust devil shape. Now, there are some other things. It could be anywhere from 10 to 100 feet. The wind speeds could be anywhere from 5 to 10 miles an hour to even 80 miles an hour. And we've even seen some dust devils on Mars. And that's all we have, Liam.
That's pretty crazy. Up to 150 feet tall. I would not want that coming down the road towards me.
They can be very strong. So after the break, Liam will be breaking down our weather highlights. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Welcome back to WeatherWise. It's time for the weather highlights of the week. We're taking you around the globe and back. So we're starting out right over here towards Tokyo and Japan, that area. We have a super typhoon that's currently spinning. It's moving north-northeast at 9 miles an hour. We expect it to be moving towards the Japan mainland between Saturday at 3 a.m. and Sunday at 3 a.m. And that's Japan Standard Time. So it's not your standard Eastern Standard Time. They are on the other side of the globe, so we are expecting, this is more likely than not, it's making landfall in the middle of our day versus the middle of their day. So it's a pretty strong storm. It's 160 miles an hour. Now, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, which issues the advisories for these super typhoons in this area of the world, uses a different wind scale than we do here in the United States called the Saffir-Simpson scale. We'll be talking about that a bit more in just a little bit. But it's really important to note that they call it a super typhoon versus a hurricane for this area. So it's 160 miles an hour, so that's the equivalent of a Category 5 storm, much like Hurricane Michael, which came through the Florida Panhandle last year. So as we move into the United States weather, we do have a very large storm system that is forming across the Intermountain West here, Great Falls, Billings, Casper, Wyoming, already seeing snow in October. So as it's really unusual. It's not unusual for this area of the country to see snow during this time of year, but what is unusual is that we're seeing over a foot of snow possible throughout this entire area. We can time it out on your futurecast here. You see the snow really starting to move through Rapid City, Bismarck, and Minneapolis, heading into Winnipeg as well as you head into the Canadian provinces. It's a very dynamic storm system. It's going to be moving across a very wide area of the northern tier of our country and then making a quick trip up into Canada over the next couple of days. So, but really what we're watching for in the impacts-wise is heavy snow. We're looking for blinding snow, very potential for heavy winds. I'm not saying there's blizzard conditions possible, which is a very important point to make, is that blizzard conditions are based off of wind criteria and visibility standards, not how much snow is falling at one period of time. So there is definitely the potential for low visibility over the next couple of days across the northern tier. Really not a great place to have to go to work over the next couple of days for sure. But as you know, we can check out exactly how much snow is going to be falling across this area. Rapid City right here, looking at about 6 to 9 inches. Bismarck right there on the edge of that 6 to 12, and areas even up here in North Dakota, potential of over a foot plus, as well as portions of the Canadian provinces here. Really watching for the potential for a pretty significant snowstorm for the October months. Definitely not your normal weather to be seeing, at least in this magnitude. So what we can really focus on now is right back here on the East Coast. We have these two systems here that are sitting off the coast. These are two potential tropical systems. They have a very low chance of forming, but they are still going to be bringing a lot of heavy wind, rain, and heavy surf to the East Coast across all the way from South Carolina all the way up through Maine over the next 5 to 6 days. It's a really a long-term situation that we're watching here, but if you like to surf, really what you're looking for is heading out to those beaches. Could see those very heavy waves, but do take caution. You got to be very careful. They probably will not have lifeguards posted, especially this late in the season. So really, you're taking your own risks there, but the waves definitely will be large, looking at 10 to 20 foot swells easily across the entire East Coast. So we can time some of that out for you on the Futurecast here. What's really, look at this, Thursday, 1 p.m., heading down to New York City for a vacation, doing anything, heading out to lunch even if you work down there. We're really looking at heavy rain moving into the area, as well as look at this tight gradient we have in what is called our mean sea level pressure. The tighter that gradient that we see, the more winds we're going to be experiencing. The tighter the gradient, the stronger the winds. So as you get through the rest of it here, the wind and the rain is just going to be battering this coast here over the couple days through Thursday. And as you see, it's going to start moving out to sea not until Saturday. So places along the East Coast, Boston, Bangor, Maine, and Massachusetts, really going to be affected by this for a long period of time. You could see the potential for maybe some flooding rains as this continues to just pound the coast. So our current fall foliage right here back at home in New York State, we're looking at some beautiful fall foliage right up here in the Adirondacks region, as well as down here during the Catskills. Right here in Oswego County, though, we're not seeing too much leaf change just yet, but as our temperatures begin to drop down a bit, we should be seeing those leaves start to change a lot more. So the next long-term, really, weather is what we're watching for is this, warmer than average temperatures down to the south parts of the state. But as you head up here to the rest of the state, we're really watching for some cooler than average weather to about average weather for the next couple weeks. This is the 8 to 14-day temperature outlook from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They're very useful tools that we use to help forecast and make sure that we're giving out accurate trends and information. So we're going to be right back with our weather myth of, our weather-wise topic of the week. Me and Christine will be breaking down all about tropical systems for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're watching Weather-Wise, only on WTOP 10. Welcome back to Weather-Wise. It's time to break down our Weather-Wise topic of the week.
Our first topic to discuss is tropical systems, what they are, how they form, and how to forecast them, namely focusing on how a tropical system specifically evolves into a hurricane, which is one of Mother Nature's most powerful storms.
So, Christine, tell us exactly what is a hurricane?
So, a hurricane is defined by the American Meteorological Society as a tropical cyclone with sustained wind speeds of at least 74 miles per hour occurring in the North Atlantic, Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Mexico, and even the eastern central North Pacific Ocean basins. So, essentially, it's a rotating low pressure system that contains organized thunderstorms, but no fronts.
So you're saying all hurricanes start out as tropical systems, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Liam.
So what are the conditions needed for tropical systems to form?
Well, there are a few main critical ingredients. This includes the unstable air that rises and cools and leads to these clouds. The moist layer, approximately about 15,000 feet necessary for continued storm activity. Also, you also need the least amount of wind shear to prevent the storm from being ripped apart. So the velocity of winds must not change significantly with height. And very important ingredient, ocean temperatures must be over 80 degrees Fahrenheit to supply the energy needed for the storm system. So when discussing these storms, it's very important to know your vocabulary. So we're first going to start off with the tropical depression. This is the organized system of clouds and thunderstorms, circulation with winds less than 38 miles per hour, just very unorganized. Then you get to the tropical depression, and then that leads to the tropical storm. This is the more organized series of thunderstorms. This is circulating with winds 39 to 73 miles per hour. Then you get your hurricane, which is what we all know. This is the intense organized tropical thunderstorms with a very strong circulation with winds 74 miles per hour or more.
So when it comes to the wind scale, I spoke about this earlier during our weather highlights. We have that Saffir-Simpson wind scale here in the United States. It was developed by two men, Homer Saffir and Bob Simpson. So they both were working at the National Hurricane Center. Homer Saffir actually worked as the National Hurricane Center director. So our first category is category 1. There's 1 through 5 categories that determines the strength of the winds of a hurricane. So category 1, we're seeing minimal damage. We are seeing winds from 74 to 95 miles an hour. That's more than enough to take down trees and provide damage to homes. Now, as we head into category 2, we're starting to see more extensive damage occur. 96 to 110 miles an hour is enough to move a person. As you get into category 3, which we consider to be a major hurricane at this point, 111 to 129 miles an hour, we're starting to see devastating damage occur across the entire area being impacted. Now, as you head into a category 4, 130 to 156 miles an hour. That's an absolute catastrophic damage is possible across the entire area. You can see in the graphic the trees are winding down and all the ocean waters begin to be pushed on. That's what we call storm surge. So we have a category 5, which is, again, catastrophic damage. You can see in the graphic indicates the house has been blown away. We did see this with stuff like Hurricane Michael, entire homes completely blown away. And like I mentioned before, the scale is only used in the Atlantic and Pacific basins. The other meteorological agencies, such as the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, have similar but separate criteria and naming structures for their tropical systems. Christine?
So when talking about hurricane season, this begins on June 1st and ends on November 30th with peak time typically in the middle of September, but that doesn't mean that you can't get hurricanes outside of the typical hurricane season. And the names are all based on a 6-year rotating list maintained by the World Meteorological Organization. And the names can be retired if the storm is devastating enough. So if you think about Hurricane Katrina in 2005, that storm was so devastating that you will no longer see that name being used in any hurricane that you see in the near future.
So when we're talking about the cone of uncertainty, it's a probable forecast that's based off of our historical track errors. So the storm intensity is predicted at each of these points from 12 to 128 hours out. This is about 5 days into the future. So like I said before, it's based off our historical track errors. So we actually reduced the hurricane cone size by 5% this year versus what we saw last year. So that's a big improvement by the National Hurricane Center. We've had a lot of really good forecasts. And it's been very exciting for the meteorological community that we're seeing these track errors improve as the years go on. Now, what's really important to note, and what confuses many people, is that the size of the cone is not indicative of the size of the storm. These storms tend to be much larger than the cones they are associated with. but generally the center of the storm will track within the cone 2/3 of the time. So that's, you can generally follow it for the track of the center of the storm, but I wouldn't rely on it to tell you about where the actual impacts are going to be happening.
Thank you, Liam. Coming up after the break, we'll be tackling one of the most common summertime weather myths, heat lightning.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to WeatherWise. Joining us now on the desk is meteorologist Eric Johnson.
So how are you doing, Eric?
Good, excited to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk about our common summertime weather myth. Our segment Weather Myths Debunked starts right now. Eric, you ever heard of heat lightning?
Yeah, so I actually believed it as a kid. People often notice flashes of lightning with no thunder or rainfall. Oftentimes there's clear skies overhead, and this is what is referred to as heat lightning. It got its name because this would typically occur on hot and humid summer nights.
But heat lightning isn't just lightning coming out of thin air, right, Eric?
No. What is actually happening is you are seeing flashes from lightning in a thunderstorm, in a distant thunderstorm. We can see flashes of lightning from thunderstorms up to 100 miles away. Around a thunderstorm temperatures also vary significantly, which can cause sound waves to refract or bend more towards the sky than to the ground where you would be listening. Also, the sound waves can bounce off the ground closer to the thunderstorm. Both of these factors allows the sound of thunder to completely avoid your location, so heat lightning actually does not exist.
That's just really crazy, Eric, because I remember going to Florida all the time as a kid, and I was always told that heat lightning was just a real thing. Like, even my mother and everyone, all the Floridians believe in it too. You would think, I mean, they experience thunderstorms all the time, that they'd be more intuitive about the whole thing.
Yeah. And I interned in South Carolina too, and I saw lightning every day with no rain and no thunder,
Yeah, so Christine, you ever experienced what you thought was heat lightning, but now we all know that it's not?
All the time. As a child, I would be outside playing, and I would just see the lightning all the time in the darkness, and I would wonder, what is that? Where is that coming from? I was just so curious, and now to know that I'm not just crazy, and heat lightning is actually just lightning from a distant thunderstorm. It's not just, from the heat. I literally thought that the heat lightning was produced because it was so hot out. That was my main thing.
It's crazy. But a great thing to always remember about lightning is that if you hear thunder roar, you really should go indoors. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if you can hear the thunder or not. If you can see the lightning, you are at risk for injury. So please do head inside and get to a safe area if you're going to be outside and you see lightning occurring. Just because you can't hear it doesn't mean it's not there. Mm-hmm. People tend to associate lightning with heat, though. That's pretty crazy. Does anybody want to take that one?
I think it's just because the humidity really causes the thunderstorms to pop up, so there's oftentimes more thunderstorms in the summer and more lightning.
Yeah, you also think of maybe like static electricity. You think of lightning, sparks, that just kind of happens on itself. So very fascinating things.
Well, that's all the time we have for Weather Myths Debunked today. We'll be right back. Coming up after the break, one final look at the weather with meteorologist Dan Maslowski.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Dan Maslowski, and we're going to be breaking down some of the weather that we have locally here in upstate New York, taking a look at live radar and satellite. We don't really have that much going on. Of course, we do have some clouds in the area, but they are clearing up and they are moving to the east of us. So for now, it doesn't look too bad. It's pretty clear. We're going to take a look at current temperatures outside. We do have low to mid 50s, some places even pushing into the high 40s. And as we take a look at the 7-day forecast, we have mostly sunny skies for Thursday. As we move into Friday and Saturday, cloudy, mid 60s, so it's going to be pretty mild air. It slowly does get a little bit cooler as we get into Sunday, 61 degrees. Then we get into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It will be cloudy, and the temperatures are going to decrease. We're going to get to 55 degrees.
Well, it seems like not a terrible forecast for this time of year. Right around average. Not getting too hot, though. I'm pretty excited about that. I have been sweating these past couple of weeks.
Me too. I am so excited for these temperatures to cool down even more. I don't know about you. I love the 60s, but I'm ready for it to go down to the 50s and 40s.
Well, I'm just excited. We made it through our first show tonight. Thank you for watching WeatherWise, only on WTOP 10. We'll see you in 2 weeks to make you WeatherWise once again.